Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday, the 25th of April, and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. So another week of lockdown. I don't know how your week's gone, Phil, but mine seems to be full of either Zoom meetings during the day or Zoom pub quizzes at night.
Well, yeah, there's. I mean, what has changed is we use Teams a lot, and as an alternative to Zoom, and Teams have updated their system now, so you can put creative background pictures on Teams, which you couldn't do before. So that's been a bit of fun.
So you can actually be sitting on the beach, can't you?
You
Instead of
can,
in your office.
Yeah, and other places, as some of the Teams colleagues have demonstrated. Yeah, there's pictures of dogs. There's pints of beer. There's all sorts of things being appeared. So it's been quite creative. I think the saving grace is that not many people have got green screens. Otherwise, it could become very creative, couldn't it?
Yeah. Well, my challenge to you is to find a pub background for your next meeting.
As if I'm sat in one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I have used the bookcase, but it wasn't convincing enough. A lot of people didn't think I was well read enough to be for that to be a real image of being sat in a library kind of office. But anyway, we'll move on. So, I mean, we just want to sort of shout out to our listeners, just to say a huge thank you for the continual support. And, especially recently with some of the fantastic interviews you had. But this is, you're listening to the 343rd episode, recorded since 2017, and that was November, even though we have been going since 2015, but this only goes back to then, and 190th download, or just short of 191,000 downloads. So, and that is just what's being recorded through Libsyn, and probably double that with including what's on iTunes. So fantastic shout out to everybody that is tuning in on a weekly basis.
Yeah, they're great figures, and as you say, we don't know the total downloads because we're not getting any response from Apple, are we? But no. We're probably not alone there.
They're not for giving up their data too easily, in fairness.
No,
not at all. But we've had some cracking interviews, haven't we?
Yeah. There's been lots of interest in the series of COVID-19 industry leader special interviews that we've been running over the last, it's probably about 2-3 weeks now. Yeah. So we've had Robert Forrester, Darren Edwards, Nathan Tomlinson, Umesh Samani, and Mike Jones, and they're all still available to stream from your favourite podcast store.
Exactly. So, I mean, we have got this week's as well, and we had a special interview, and it was the first for us during this sort of lockdown period, and we had the pleasure of interviewing Kristian, who is the MD of Volvo Cars UK, and it was great to hear that he is actually a fan of the show. He does tune in on a regular basis, and it was a great pleasure to have him on, and a very insightful recording there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is a really good insight into how an OEM approached the lockdown. So do stay tuned for that, because it's just fascinating. And he was the last man to leave the building when they went into lockdown.
So we've got some headlines to go through. Some positives for the sector, with looks like a turn in activity. Latest from the Lookers investigation. There's some announcement there. The update on the how the FCA are looking at motor finance during this pandemic, and a little bit more from how some of the AM100 groups are giving up their salaries, etc., to support their business. And finally, from Book My Garage and around the MOTs and the support within the NHS and key worker area as well, haven't we?
Yeah, so the first story this week, and it has created a bit of a stir on social media. So the story is from Car Dealer, and the headline is official. Government confirms car dealers can sell cars and deliver during lockdown. And this is, you're looking at the story, it's based on a conversation that they had with a spokesperson from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which is BEIS. That's really catchy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and it appears to confirm that dealers can start selling and delivering cars, which kind of goes against what the guidelines were up until then. But as I say, it's caused a bit of a furore on social media and has actually been challenged by the NFDA, hasn't it?
It has. I mean, within the story, they do talk about the advice ads in terms of what dealers should consider in terms of communicating with their customers and around social distance and things like that. So, it's worth checking out the story. There's some useful insight there into, things to consider that you might not be considering when you do come to deal or communicate and hand over vehicles, etc., with your customers. But you're right. I think the NFDA have challenged this statement and saying that the reports have no official statement has been coming out of the BEIS in the last few days with regards to the dealers entitled to sell remotely and deliver cars to customers. And they are suggesting that the comments attributed to the BEIS is not correct. It's not come from an official statement from the BEIS to support this release. So again, it's creating. I mean, what I'm taking from this, and it's a challenge that the whole sector's got, really, is people take, because there's an eagerness to return to some kind of normality from across the sector, businesses generally, that any kind of light at the end of the tunnel that gives them the opportunity to start doing something, they'll take it. And I think we're finding that you have to be very, very careful, because if you are an OEM operating in Germany, for argument's sake, that have lifted some kind of restrictions, and you read that statement that's published on Car Dealer, then that creates the questions as to why the dealers aren't opening and operating and returning to delivering cars. And so you have to be very careful, because the guidance in each of the countries is different. It's not necessarily that what's happening in Germany is happening again in the UK, because they are, BIS are denying that is a statement from them, and that the sector should remain with the previous guidance that they've given until things do change.
Yeah, you're right, because the NFDA actually say the position of BIS has not changed from earlier guidance. BIS's position is that a retailer's decision to sell remotely, which includes online, and deliver products remains exclusively a decision for the dealer.
Yeah. We'll watch that one as it pans out, and I'm sure that next week we may have more information on that one when we record next week. So moving on, and again, kind of a bit of an upbeat for activity within the sector, and this is on AM Online, and this is online used car activity suggests market rebound, and this comes from some data that James Chew is talking about from iVendy, isn't it? And this is kind of a bit of an upturn in activity.
Yeah, it's a really good positive story, this one, and it kind of echoes some recent comments from Auto Trader and eBay Motors Group about online activity in terms of used car searches. So iVendy looked at its data set, and it showed that website visits for used cars, used vans and used motorbikes during the last week were actually running at 40% compared to the average during both January and February, where it had fallen as low as 33%. So that's an increase from 33% to 40%. So nowhere near where it was, if you're looking year on year. But in terms of a movement in the right direction, that's really encouraging. And they also looked at the way customers were looking at online eligibility checks for finance, and they found that had gone up from 34% in averaged across January and February to 66% over the last 7 days. So these are really positive findings.
It is, and it feels that, and it's there's been other stories on the sort of data from people like Auto Trader and What Car and things like that you start of seeing this leveling out and then a sort of an upturn in terms of activity. That whether it is a case of people are now, I don't know, is it the boredom curve? Is it that actually, do you know what? There's a sense that there is some activity returning. There is a restriction lift on the horizon at some point. Nobody knows when and what that will look like, but it does feel that way, doesn't it? That we're on the upward trajectory now from that plateau point at the bottom, and which is good news. It's I think from a dealer perspective to see that kind of data and that activity, albeit like you said, it's not back to normality. I think it'll be some time before we get back to that normal figure, but at least it's an upward trend from where it's been. So I think it's positive news.
Yeah, and for dealers who have maintained that online activity, promoting whatever stock they have, it does vindicate their decision to do so, because there are buyers out there having a look at the moment.
Yeah, and as some of the previous interviews, the Darren Edwards, etc., from Sytner's, that e-commerce, that online platform has been key through this period of lockdown, hasn't it, for many dealers?
Well, yeah, I mean, good point there, because Sytner actually brought forward the launch of their online used car platform because it wasn't due to be launched until the summer. But, it was sitting there, I guess, waiting on the shelf to be launched. So they just brought it forward because they knew that customers would be out there looking at used cars. Yeah,
definitely. So on to a bit of an update, really, because we did mention this at the time on the podcast, and this is returning to Car Dealer. And the Lookers fraud investigation results in a £4 million charge as other irregularities are uncovered. And we're looking at the trading update on the London Stock Exchange from Lookers, and some of the they do talk on there about some of the trading in the period before the lockdown and obviously the investigation that took place, but they have uncovered some interesting results from this, and still ongoing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it really does spell it out. And as you say, we're looking at the trading and operational update. And within it, it says the initial phase of the investigation focused on the operating division concerned. Now, I'm not sure we know which operating division it was. And it goes on to say it identified certain misrepresented debtor balances in respect of bonus receivables, together with a number of fraudulent expense claims. And it goes on to say these items are expected to give rise to a one-off non-cash charge in 2019 of around £4 million. But interestingly, it also goes on to say that the initial investigation has actually been extended across all operating divisions. So, there is more to come out, and we'll hear it in the fullness of time. And Lookers have confirmed that their full year results will now be due in June, so we'll know what's going on there. And it's worth adding that it was the board that actually requested that the investigation was expanded.
Yeah, they are taking. I mean, the delay till June is taking advantage of the COVID-19 opportunity that you can publish financial statements back and take that advantage there. So again, I mean, Mark Rayburn, who we've had on the show previously, who's the chief exec officer now at Lookers, is there saying that challenging times, and on behalf of everyone at Lookers, our first thoughts remain with obviously those impacted with the virus and serving at the front line, and thank everyone for their continued support through the furlough period and patience and understanding through these difficult times. So again, a lot more to probably come from this, but it's great that they are keeping everybody up to date.
Yeah, and the next story is from Motor Trader with a headline of FCA brings in 3-month motor finance payment freeze. And this is confirmation of a story that I think had been kicking around for a little while. There'd been mutterings about this, but the Financial Conduct Authority has confirmed the introduction of a 3-month payment freeze for motor finance. So, it's good to have that confirmed, because it's good for the dealers, it's good for the customers, and it's good to have some clarity amongst the finance houses as well. So, and this is really aimed at customers having temporary difficulties meeting payments because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and they are stating that obviously firms not to alter the PCP or PCH agreements in any way, and they're not to recalculate any of the PCP balloon payments. And they do go on to say that where customers wish to keep their vehicles, as we know is an option on a PCP agreement, that but if they do not have the cash available to cover the balloon payment due to the current situation of COVID-19, then firms should look to work with customers to find an appropriate solution. So, it's good advice coming out from the FCA there, and really what this is about is to ensure that customers in this difficult time don't exit out of this with credit issues and finding themselves not in a position to renew their PCP contracts and get into another agreement, and that these challenging times don't leave them with any scar on their credit profile as well. So it's good news there coming from the FCA to the finance houses.
So you're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast in association with eBay Motors Group, the only weekly podcast serving the car retailing sector, and available online at motortraderadio.com and by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Deezer, and SoundCloud.
So we don't get any more.
Yeah. Join the queue.
Exactly. We get a long list there. So we're returning to AM Online now, and this kind of aligns with some of the previous stories that we've talked about on the podcast from both Pendragon and Motorpoint, to name a few. But Stoneacre have announced that their directors will take a no salary pay cut, no salary, until profitability returns to the business. And they're quoted to say that the Stoneacre Motor Group's directors will forego their salaries after taking the decision to furlough 3,000 employees due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, vowing not to take a wage until the business returns to some kind of profitability. Now, that's either that's a carrot, possibly, to get the business back up and running ASAP and get them back into profitability. But a great story that they've done that and supporting their employees.
Yeah, it's a bold statement, and it is going to be welcomed by Stoneacre's staff, especially those on furlough. So it is a good move, and as you say, it does follow recent reports that we've covered about Motorpoint's MD Mark Carpenter giving up his salary during the current pandemic, and Pendragon's CEO and board giving up 20% of their salaries until we're back until we're on the other side of this.
Yeah, and there's a few statements there coming out of Stoneacre that the directors and senior management's working fiercely over the last few weeks to ensure that all the concerns are addressed and with new working practices ready for the implementation, back to ensure that the customers and value colleagues are looked after. So great news from them. I mean, everybody's doing the bit in these difficult times.
And the final story this week is from Motor Trader, and the headline is "Book My Garage offers pre-MOT safety check free to NHS staff and key workers." So this is it's a new safety check, and it's really aimed because of the 6-month exemption of MOTs. If you have got a car that was maybe due an MOT and you're worried about its roadworthiness, then you can go online and find a garage that will actually carry out a pre-MOT safety check. And what's particularly notable about this is that it's being offered free of charge to NHS staff and key workers who, of course, need to maintain their mobility throughout the crisis.
No, it's definitely, and they do add, and it's statements there from Karen Rotberg, who's the founder of Book My Garage, and talking around that the service is resonating with car owners, as added with over 60% of all bookings on the website within the first week of being available. 15% of those were immediately NHS staff and key workers, and what great. I mean, you can see this starting to grow. I mean, they've already confirmed that 67% of its network are now open and operating, and the appetite to become a Book My Garage business is increasing as well. And you can see where this is working both for the independent franchise dealers, but also looking after the consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the garages are exempt from closure, and as the story points out, a number of them have elected to reopen. So this is good news, especially as they're supporting NHS staff and key workers.
So we've had some cracking, some good headlines there, some positive results coming out around the activity from iVendi, and whatever the outcome with the BEIS statements and etc. But you can kind of see that the market is on a bit of a change, isn't it? And there's a lot more stories out there, but very much COVID related at the minute.
Yeah, because we have had a few gloomy weeks, haven't we, in terms of headlines? So, there's some, dare I say, green shoots starting to appear in the podcast.
Definitely. No, it's good. It's good. There's a lot to choose from, and it's great. We've got some brilliant interviews. There's lots of insight and lots of knowledge being shared across the sector, and it's truly demonstrating the power of social media, webinars, conference calls, and podcasts into it at the minute.
Yeah, and that's basically it for this week, isn't it? So you've been listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for tuning in, and do join Philip and I again next weekend, and also look out for any special interviews that we'll be running during the week. Until then, stay safe, and also stay tuned for a special interview we recorded earlier this week with Kristian Elfors, who's the Managing Director of Volvo Car UK. But until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Hello and welcome from me, Philip Northard and Curtis Hutchinson, to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for this, the 6th in our series of special interviews with industry leaders during the COVID-19 crisis. Following recent conversations with Sytner Group's Darren Edwards, Virtue Motors' Robert Forrester, the IMDA's Umesh Samani, ASE's Mike Jones, and last week's interview with Nathan Tomlinson, owner of Devonshire Motors. All of these podcasts are still available to stream online from motortraderadio.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts.
Our special guest today is Kristian Elfors, Managing Director of Volvo Car UK. Now, Kristian is the first car maker to come onto our special series of interviews during the lockdown. So welcome to the show, Kristian. And how's home working going for you? How is the experience? And what's a typical day for you at the moment?
I think it's very busy days. I think over Easter it was a bit slower pace, but it's coming back again, and it starts quite early with my allowed short walk outside the house, and then back with some fresh energy from the fresh air, and then it's Teams for the full day, I would say. So it's conference and videos from early morning to the late evening.
And you were describing before we came on that you're actually in lockdown with your family, and you all go off to your separate rooms to work through the day.
Yeah, I think we had an agreement together as a family how we should cope with the lockdown. And my wife is also working, and also the kids are going into the school and doing digital lessons. But I think it works quite well. You need to have some sort of agreement within the family how to handle things to survive, I would say. it works well.
Yes.
So, in terms of welcome, Kristian, as well. So, in terms of the lockdown, can you take us through how you implemented the lockdown for Volvo cars in the UK?
I think actually the week before the official lockdown, the 21st, we started to close the offices to test how actually we were able to work from home. I think we saw it coming, and we said we need to try out so we can have everyone working from home, and to test the video conferencing, and people can, in quite a structured way, take the gears home and set up desktops and home working offices. And also the number of Teams licenses needed to be added as we were so many people to start to work from home. I think it went quite well. On the 21st, I was the last person leaving the office in Maidenhead, and Daventry was also closed accordingly as well. So that's how we managed it, and so far so good.
So captain of the ship and women and children first, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, but I think it was a very structured way of doing it as we started a week earlier, and also people could come in and change the computers, and a lot of people pretend to be able to do video conferencing, and even if we had invested a lot of money, there was a lot of people that were not used to it. So in that sense, a lot of people now are more used to using things like Teams, and that's pretty good, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
also
Kristian,
you realize you have some people coming in and printing papers all the time, and you wonder why do we print? So there have been some developments as well, that's for sure.
Some learnings, definitely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Kristian, on the subject of communication, since the lockdown started, how have you maintained communication channels with your dealer partners? I mean, for instance, 2 or 3 weeks ago when we spoke to Robert Forrester, he was talking about a WhatsApp group that one of the OEMs was running, and a lot of the dealers had jumped on board, and everyone's talking to each other. So, yeah, I wondered if you're using WhatsApp groups, for instance, and how would you actually describe the mood of your dealers at the moment?
Yeah, I think communication is key, as everything. I do my video clips to my staff every morning, both the furloughed ones and the ones that are still working, to just give them some energy and to see my face and also what we're doing, and also the same with the retailers. I think we are doing the WhatsApp with the retailer advisory board, and we also have retailer advisory board meetings twice a week, and also WebEx 1 or twice a week with the rest of the retailers. I think all the information sharing we can do, and also learning from each other best practice, and sharing how people have furloughed and how they are adapting to the rules from the government have been really knowledgeable for everyone. And I think the retailers are working very close together with us, and so I think we have had a good session so far, and we have learned a lot from each other. That's really positive. And I think the retailer network are still positive. But of course, if this will continue for months more to come, then I think we are in a tougher environment than we are today. But so far so good.
So just on that, I mean, the lockdown, as we know, came in at potentially, I mean, we say the worst time it could happen. I suppose there is a positive view that at least we got part of March before lockdown. But obviously, it's come in one of the bigger months of the year, if not the biggest month of the year for both car retailers and for OEMs. How did the business manage to sort of facilitate, obviously, March deliveries? Because obviously, it's a matter of getting the deliveries both to the retailers as quickly as possible and out to the customers as quickly as possible. And how are you addressing the orders that have been caught up in the pipeline? Because obviously, there'll be product that is at different stages within the pipeline as well.
I think when we went into March, everyone was super positive. Big order books, a lot of cars coming, and I think we were in a very, very good shape. And then suddenly mid-16th of March, it just started to slow down. And then that week we realized we will not get all the cars we needed, and the factory in Belgium was shut, and who was providing us with the XC40s. The week after, when we had the former lockdown in the UK, also Rusland was shut. And that, I think as we were so dependent on so many cars coming in from the last weeks of March, it was a bit of a drama those days. But I think what we needed to do already first week, already the day one in the lockdown, was to take away all the target settings and all the audits we are doing, and requirements and demonstrations and demonstrators, show cars, etc. So I would say that we were the first day we ran out of taking away a lot of the burdens towards the retailers, and that's things I think we got a lot of positive feedback from that one.
Now, Kristian, you've got an interesting perspective as you ran Volvo's operations in Sweden for 4 years before becoming UK MD in March last year. Can you tell us how important the UK is for Volvo, and also what level of support have you had from Sweden since the lockdown started?
I think what is so good with Volvo is it's a so easy access to everyone within the office and in the headquarters. I think from me as an MD or from anyone in the office to call into the executive management team or call the production, and it's just one call away. I think that is one of our key advantages as a small business. So they are super supportive. And I think from coming as an MD from Sweden, we have always been the home market. Home market is always special, but UK, Germany and Sweden are the top three markets of the EMEA. And also looking historic about the UK, and also in the 80s when we were actually selling 85 to 87,000 units, we have a long history as a strong brand within the UK, and that is something that we would like to keep up, of course. UK is a super important market for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've in terms of that year-on-year, month-on-month growth over recent years, and in terms of that sort of future product lineup, it's certainly it's got a firm place in the UK as some of the head CEO of groups have certainly said, in terms of those that are supporting the brand as well. So no, it's looking good. So in terms of what,
I got to say the 7,000 cars yet from the 80s when we had the 340 around. That's a bit a way to go still. Yeah,
it's heading in the right direction, though, isn't it, Kristian? I mean, it's some very positive growth and positive investment in the UK, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of what work are you and the team currently doing now? Because obviously we're now starting, there's the potential restart of the business as sort of hopefully the lockdown is starting to consider getting lifted, and obviously we don't know exactly when that is going to be, but obviously there was this process of going into lockdown and closing things down, and then now it's a case of thinking about the other side of this. And how involved are the dealers in that process as well, in terms of this restart for Volvo in the UK and the dealer network?
I think from a restart strategy point of view, if you don't have the retailers on board, then you will not succeed. So I think that's super important to have them on board very early, and we have a lot of debates with them how we should do it and what to focus on. And I'm also very thankful that they are sharing so much knowledge with us, because I think we need them. Otherwise, we will struggle to do the restart. And we have today 70% of our people are furloughed within Volvo Car UK. They don't have access to emails, to telephones whatsoever. So they have this furloughed WhatsApp, where I share some information with them. So we are a very small team working, and we are working very hard to get this done now, and really involved by the dealers as well. So I think we are getting there, but it's not about how, it's about more than when can we do the restart now. I think we are quite ready to go.
Now, Kristian, the final question for you, and it's kind of a big one. How do you think car retailing will change after the lockdown is lifted in terms of, what role will social distancing have in car transactions? And, do you foresee more transactions or more of the transaction process moving online?
I think it will take a long time until we see that we are coming back to something we had when we left. I think not only the workshops, how they are operating and how they will operate in the future that will change for sure. I do think we will see much more sanitizer, much more face masks, much more different way of workings to keep the social distancing, much more pickup and deliveries on a workshop perspective. I think from a new car sales, it can take time until we are able to open workshops again, and work to the showrooms. So I think virtual sales and online sales will take a bigger part, and that also includes pickup and deliveries for customers. So there will be a change, and until we have any form of vaccine or whatsoever, it will look differently. And of course, I think the online sales thing would have changed the coming years anyhow, but the coronavirus took us there a bit earlier.
Yes, because as a brand, like many brands, you actually have an online transaction facility, don't you? So that was already in place, which must be helping you at the moment. I just wonder how busy that is at the moment. Are you getting a lot of customers coming online and looking at buying cars?
No, we are seeing a certain amount of cars going that direction as well, but it's also getting the customer used to buy a car in that sense, because it's not that easy to buy a car online, even if everyone is providing tools to do it. It's easier to sell a stock car than to configure something new. So I think not only us, but all car manufacturers have some adjustments to do to get the proper online sales tool up, and also the guidance part of it, because it's still quite an expensive product you are buying, or you are taking on a PCH or a PCP. So you need to feel secure that you're buying the right thing, and then you need some personal assistance as well throughout the purchasing process.
And just following on from the social distancing, actually in the showroom, between staff and customers, do you foresee that process actually changing? And would you not necessarily be concerned if you see a drop in footfall, for instance, because a lot of the transactions would have moved online?
Yeah, I think it's also the differences between now with risk groups and how they will handle the situation going forward as well, because I think you need to be able to operate both scenarios going forward. So even if you're getting back to some sort of reopening of the showrooms, there will be customers out there that are not willing to come in. And you need to help them with an online solution. I think that's super important. So a bit of divided workspace in the future.
Yeah, it is certainly going to be a long period of time, because it is going to change things. We are going to be entering a new normal, no matter what, into it on the exit of all this. And as you say, Kristian, that the social distancing and the way retailers and OEMs and consumers operate between themselves will have to change in the short to medium term until the confidence comes back and things like that. So no, I can see some of those challenges being there for some time initially.
And also, I think the importance for us as OEM and also for the retailers is to provide the customers with a safe process for handovers and buying and workshops, not only for the customers, but also for the employees. So I think we are paying a lot of attention to do this as safely as possible, and also implement new guidelines and new processes.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I mean, Kristian, we'll try not to keep you much longer. So we appreciate you coming on. It's been absolutely fantastic in terms of thanks for joining us on the show and obviously sharing some of the perspective as an OEM, obviously with our listeners. It's been a fascinating chat as we knew it would be, and obviously from Curtis, myself and the Motor Trade Radio, we want to wish you and the Volvo team and the family all the best, and please obviously stay safe, and obviously in terms of the partners during these challenging times ahead. So thanks for joining us today, Kristian. It's been an absolute pleasure and appreciated.
And thank you. And I'm a true fan, as I said in the beginning as well. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristian.
We do our best. So that's all for now. You've been listening to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. So please like and share on social media. It is important during these challenging times that we share across the dealer community to work together and share experiences and best practices. Curtis and I will be back with the industry headlines on Saturday as normal, but watch out for more special podcast interviews as we work through this unique crisis that we find ourselves in. So many thanks for listening, and please do stay safe, everybody.